Did you ever run into any situations where, let's say, when you were sharing that, let's say the profit share evenly across the board, that let's say people in similar roles but with different kind of output, right? So like let's say in a culture of meritocracy where someone's output is tied to their results, whether it's someone on the sales team, the marketing team, or what have you, essentially, how would you address bottom performers basically earning the same amount, and did that ever breed resentment from a top performer in terms of the profit share?
No, because they saw that somebody was lagging behind and jumped in to teach them, to bring them up to speed. And there were a couple of times when they said, this person isn't pulling their weight, they got to go. And so we would move them from position to position to try to find a good fit for them before we let them go. I hired a really brilliant young man once to help me in finance. And when he was coming aboard, he was like all about our culture. He thought it was the coolest thing ever. And a couple of months into his employ, he pulled me aside to tell me that I didn't really understand how a profit share was supposed to work. He said, so he explained it to me, how it was supposed to be a percentage of your salary. And I said, oh my gosh. So let's say Frank, for instance, our receptionist, because Frank's salary is like a quarter of yours, then his percentage of the profit should be that much less. And he said, exactly, you got it. That's the way these things are supposed to work. And I had to let him go because he didn't really buy into our culture that we were all equally valuable. His salary was already set higher, which was understanding and appreciation for his education and his special skill that he brought to the table. But for him to want more of the pie after that, no way was I going to have that in my company. And
it's interesting. I'm reading much of these questions that I would ask you, and I can kind of summarize them because there's so many tied to entitlement and enabling and things like that. And my view on when you're investing and reinvesting into your team, it's not necessarily like the view of, well, what about the ones that take advantage of it? And what about the ones that, may not perform? It's not really so much the thought is for them. It's for all the people that are committed and are engaged, that stand to that ultimately you do want to support, even if there's always going to be maybe a small percentage that may not be as vested.
That's absolutely true. And as I said, occasionally we did have somebody like that, but we weeded them out pretty quickly. We ended up with just a cream of the crop team all across the board. And maybe to drive home the value of that profit share when it comes to loyalty, I sold the company to private equity in 2016. And the first day that it was theirs, they did away with the profit share. And so it's not surprising that, 2 years later, and only 11 of my 51 employees are still with them. And the job market, especially then in Nashville, was really, really tight, really hard to get good people, and very low unemployment. And they lost some top, high caliber, high quality, high character people because of changing that practice. And it ended up costing them a lot more, I'm sure.